Chumlee made a thoughtless decision in 2010 that completely altered the pawn shop. He was holding what appeared to be an ordinary bass guitar. Pawn value is only $700. Nothing noteworthy. However, Rick's face turned white when he saw the repair cost after it tumbled to the floor. Chum Lee was unable to talk since the number was too large. Rick erupted in rage that no one had ever witnessed. He motioned Chum Lee to leave right away, pointing to the door. For months, the store was torn apart by what transpired next. Although this error was never seen on television, it became the most talked about catastrophe in Pawn Stars history. On September 8, 1982, Austin Lee Russell was born in a modest Henderson, Nevada, house. He came from a low-income family as the second child. Additionally, his mother was under pressure when his parents divorced early in his youth. To keep the lights on, she put in a lot of overtime, often working 2 or 3 jobs at once. She tried to make Austin and his siblings, Sage and Tara, feel normal even though she was always exhausted when she got home. She frequently purchased used goods from garage sales and flipped them for a few additional dollars because money was tight. Austin observed her converting trash into cash for rent. And he began to understand how value operated without even realizing it. He witnessed how something seemingly insignificant to one individual could have significant meaning for another. The first silent seeds of the pawnshop life he would eventually enter were sown in those early days. Austin grew up like any other child in the suburbs surrounding Las Vegas in the 1990s. He initially enjoyed playing video games, collecting toys, and spending time with friends after school. Even so, he had a keen sense of interesting things. Austin strolled through garage sales with his mother and attempted to exchange stuff for things he desired more, while other children were preoccupied with sports or cartoons. He was good at figuring out what people might be willing to pay for and what looked cool. Although it wasn't yet serious work, it was the beginning of a mindset that would follow him throughout his life in music. One of the most difficult lessons a child can learn was taught to him when he was 10 years old. He spent $50 on what he thought was a genuine Mickey Mantle card, using the money he had saved up from small exchanges at school. $50 was big to him. He felt as though he had made a wonderful purchase. However, he discovered it was a fake when he showed it to an older collector. The disappointment was intense. Years later, he recalled the sensation because it hurt so much. However, he learned something from that error that he will never forget. He learned that genuineness is crucial and that flashy things deceive people. He then used that childhood setback as a cautionary tale at the pawn store. After observing Austin's round face when he was around 12, a friend's father said that he resembled Chumlee, the walrus from the vintage Tennessee tuxedo cartoon. At first, Austin didn't like it, but once a term for music sticks at that age, it's impossible to get rid of. Before long, everyone referred to him as Chum Lee. What began as taunting evolved into his identity. He developed into music it rather than fleeing from it. He became well known thanks to his moniker, which also helped him stand out when he entered the reality TV industry. His 1994 joke about walrus became part of his brand. He had a difficult time in middle school. During those years, he discovered something that helped him fit in, even though his appearance and nickname made him an easy target. Chumlee discovered he could purchase, trade, and sell Pokemon cards for a little profit when they became popular in the late 1990s. Without ever opening a textbook, he began to comprehend supply and demand. He began receiving card deals from kids who mocked him. By doing what he was good at, he gradually gained confidence. He acquired skills in interpersonal communication, negotiation, and identifying genuine value. He felt that school was over by the time he was 17. He left Green Valley High School in 1999 and enrolled in the GED program. Wherever he could, he took jobs. One of them stocked shelves and assisted customers in locating vintage issues at a comic book store. Collectors, gamers, and others who shared his interests lived in comic book stores. It allowed him to be near the world he knew best. He handled antiques, interacted with consumers, and discovered how much individuals were prepared to spend on unique treasures. That store was preferable to a classroom in his opinion. He made a potentially disastrous decision when he was 15. At a flea market, he attempted to sell a stolen bike part. After being discovered, he was grounded for several months. He felt terrified, ashamed, and compelled to consider the kind of person he wanted to be. Rather from discouraging him from engaging in the world of buying and selling, it increased his commitment to doing it correctly. He became aware of the importance of honesty and reputation. He never dealt with dubious transactions after that grounding. The day he met Corey Harrison, everything changed. They lived in the same Henderson neighborhood and were both about 8 years old. A friendship that lasted decades began with two children who bonded over video games and collections. Chumlee spent a lot of time in the world of Corey, whose family owned the gold and silver pawn shop, which had opened in 1989. He had no idea at the time how much that friendship would influence his destiny. When he was 18 in 2000, Corey accompanied him to the pawn store just to look at vintage comic books. Inside, however, Chumlee observed Rick Harrison negotiating $150 for an old-fashioned Atari console. Something ignited within him as he saw Rick bargain like that. Every object had a backstory. Each transaction was a riddle. He wanted to know how it all worked after that one instant. He was volunteering at the store for free by 2001. He searched through dusty comic book boxes, sifted shelves full of vintage Nintendo games, and examined valuables for damage. He saw a phony He-Man figure one day that nearly tricked everyone. Rick rewarded Chumlee with the day's tips, music, after he verified it was fake. Rick saw at that one moment that Chumlee had a knack for identifying jewels and fakes, music. He made his first real deal in 2002. Chumlee identified a Super Mario Bros. Cartridge, music, that a customer had brought in as unusual. He advised Rick to spend $200 on it. Rick paused, but Chumlee was certain. After they purchased it, the store sold it for $800. Chumlee received a $50 commission and a significant boost to his self-esteem. He felt like he belonged at the shop at that time. The tale even made an appearance on Pawn Stars years later. He has witnessed the negative aspects of the pawn industry. A Civil War pistol once caused a heated quarrel. The client was adamant that it was genuine and valuable. Rick didn't agree. Tempers surged and voices soared. Chumlee saw everything tremble, yet the incident made him realize how crucial caution and awareness were. He witnessed the swift escalation of a straightforward transaction. He was formally hired at the gold and silver pawn store in 2003, the year he turned 21. At first, he was paid $8 per hour. He operated the counter, processed pawn tickets, and used acid kits to analyze gold chains. Although it wasn't glamorous, he gained new knowledge every day. He gradually integrated himself into the group. Even though he was unaware of it at the time, the gradual rhythm of his formative years was preparing him for the day when the cameras would roll and everyone would recognize the name he had once detested. When Chumlee first started working at the pawn shop in 2004, he was still a timid child getting used to the atmosphere. The day started the same way every morning when he arrived at 9 o'clock. Unannounced trucks pulled in carrying auctions for storage units. There were occasionally hundreds of items stacked on top of each other. Boxes that smelled of mystery and dust, piles of comic book lots, and vintage 1950s Hot Wheels automobiles. He had to quickly sift everything and estimate the value of each item. He would occasionally haggle for entire cartons of vintage comics for less than $100, music. It was a laborious and time-consuming task. Additionally, there were times when he felt less like an employee and more like a mover. But he developed something as a result of those hours. He discovered how to uncover value in trash. When the program eventually needed someone who knew storage units better than anybody else, this early grind served as the foundation that got him through the years. His first significant victory came in 2005. When a vintage Star Wars lightsaber toy from the 1970s entered, music trusted his gut rather than giving it to Rick or Corey. Collectors attempted to dissuade him or intimidate him into believing it was worthless after he paid $300 for it. He refused to back down. When the store sold it for around $3,000, the profit alone increased the store's monthly sales by almost 20%. For Chumlee, it was the first time he felt like more than a laborer. He had the impression that he could see what others did not. In the shop, word got out. Among the local collectors, word got out. For the first time, he understood that if he persisted, he could mold his own position in the company. However, the following year served as a reminder of how quickly music may go awry. Believing it to be authentic, he spent $1,200 on a Rolex in 2006. When Rick discovered it was a phony, he blew up. Chumlee had never before heard him declare, "You're fired," with genuine rage. The shop lost $900 as a result of the error. Chumlee repeatedly apologized until Rick calmed down, even after he sold the false watch for $30 to cover the loss. The lesson remained even after Rick allowed him to stay. Chumlee double-cheated everything after that day. He never forgot how simple it was to make a mistake under pressure. He had developed to the point where Rick began to trust him with more significant tasks by 2007. Chumlee was the person who handled the unusual goods that famous collectors brought in. When a genuine Elvis Presley belt buckle arrived at the store one day, he immediately verified its authenticity and sold it for $500. Additionally, he became knowledgeable about the pawn shop's early digital system and assisted in transferring the inventory into a computer, which allowed the shop to maintain an unprecedented level of organization. Despite his reputation as the silly guy on TV, he was actually playing a significant role in the store's operations. He also attempted to make changes in his personal life in 2008. Over the course of the year, he shed 50 pounds by using the pawn shop's little gym. When he spoke with consumers, he felt lighter and more assured. After noticing the shift, Rick increased his hourly wage to $12. For him, it was a significant leap. Additionally, it was the first time he had ever felt genuinely valued. There was a change that year. He was evolving into the persona that the public would later see on television. Someone who put forth a lot of effort behind the scenes but laughed music readily. Chumlee had 5 years of experience by the time filming began in July 2009. He entered the producer's audition and made it a memorable moment that is still discussed on the show. When he saw a Pac-Man arcade machine, he began negotiating with the manufacturers as though they were clients. He made everyone laugh by cracking jokes and arguing about the machine's price. None of it was planned by him. They adored his natural timing. He was immediately cast. He was Corey's pal who grew up in the shop and unintentionally became the show's main character. He made appearances in 10 of the 16 episodes of the first season, which aired in 2009 and 2010. The scene where he pays $150 for a Beatles CD from the 1960s, feeling both nervous and excited, is one that most people remember. He immediately struck a chord with viewers. Each episode of the season attracted roughly 2.7 million people, and he received an unexpected amount of fan letters. People enjoyed his straightforward humor and his authenticity on camera. He had no idea how enormous his ascension would get, and it happened quickly. Even yet, he put much more effort off camera than most people realized. He read music, vintage guidelines and committed values to memory while staying up late. One day, while filming an appraisal of a Civil War blade, he made so many mistakes that the scene had to be redone 5 times. He didn't want to give up, even though he detested slowing everyone down. He was improved by that effort. The goofy clerk gradually gained the respect of admirers for his efforts to develop. His life had dramatically transformed by the time season 2 concluded in 2010. Because of the show, he moved from making $25,000 a year at the pawn shop to $100,000. He began accumulating a sizable library of video games and purchased his first vehicle, a 1995 Mustang. Freedom was brought about by money, and even more confidence resulted from that freedom. Even though he became a multi-millionaire by 2016, those early checks were crucial because they demonstrated to him that his life had actually improved. He also started meeting fans in person that year. He took additional time with children or collectors who were anxious, and he signed autographs at tiny gatherings in Las Vegas. He received a rare $400 Nintendo Zelda cartridge from a fan at one event. Even though it was a modest gesture, he remembered it. As a memento of his progress, he retained the cartridge. In 2004, I was a dusty box sorter, but now I'm music, someone people like enough to bring gifts. It all started in 2011 when he stunned fans by entering the store with a $2,500 replica of a Tommy gun from the 1920s. Although the experts stated it was a good reproduction, music, worth roughly $5,000, most people thought he would ruin it. Rick Harrison genuinely grinned and complimented him on rare music when he sold it for that sum. Chumlee's ability to think independently and flip the script was adored by fans. People's perceptions of him changed after that one transaction. Then, in 2012, he abruptly joined Nickelodeon. In front of around 4 million young viewers, he made an appearance as himself in the iCarly episode One Lost My Head in Vegas, standing with Rick and Corey. He was arguing over a pretend sword, much like he did in the shop, so his part felt silly and lighthearted. Little quotes from him became booming memes as kids started quoting him online. He also experienced the burden of being acknowledged by individuals who weren't even Pawn Stars viewers for the first time. He was already drawing over 3.5 million viewers per show in 2013, but one particular moment stood out more than the others. During a crossover with Duck Dynasty, he exchanged a number of duck calls for $300. Although it seemed straightforward, fans of both shows went crazy on the internet. The image of bearded hunters mingling with turmoil from pawnshops was a hit on social media. Both sides saw an increase in ratings as Chum Lee carried the entire time with a carefree, enjoyable vibe. By 2014, he was well known enough to try something else. Fans quickly snatched up the t-shirts he introduced under his own brand. He made $150,000 after selling 10,000 shirts at $20 each. That money demonstrated his ability to turn celebrity into revenue and helped modernize the store. Some shirts were even resold for more money on the internet, where they were regarded as collectors. Everything culminated in an unexpected moment in 2015. For $10,000, he purchased a real, music, Picasso sketch. After being verified, the item was put up for auction and sold for $25,000. This seemed to be a watershed moment. Those who had previously made fun of him now observed him as a capable artist standing in the store. He was admired even by professional collectors. Chumlee briefly believed he had merited his position. However, there were times when he was severely wounded beneath all of those wins. He spent $155,000 of his personal cash for what he believed to be a rare upright bass years before the show debuted in 2008. According to the expert, it was a total hoax. Everything he had saved was destroyed by the loss, which also caused a strained relationship with Corey Harrison. The story became part of Pawn Stars history after fans learned about it, demonstrating how quickly trust can break down when money is involved. Chumlee acknowledged that he had no business purchasing a costly instrument for music, and the error plagued him for years. In 2012, he made another mistake with an unsightly guitar that he had overpaid music for in Season 5. He overpaid by $3,500, and the store lost $2,000 when the guitar was determined to be a fake. Viewers remembered the moment when Rick reprimanded him on camera. It turned into one of the show's music strongest cautions against making ignorant purchases. Chumlee attempted to dismiss it with a laugh, but the error went beyond what the cameras captured. Another hit came the following year. He believed he had struck a bargain when he spent $4,000 on 3 Rolex watches in 2013. All 3 were ultimately shown to be fraudulent by the experts. It forced the store to establish a new policy prohibiting him from managing luxury purchases without the presence of an expert. Although fans made jokes about it, the embarrassment was genuine. It made him confront the reality that confidence in the absence of skill can be risky. When he insisted on purchasing an arcade game in 2014 despite an expert's warning that the music was problematic, everything erupted once more. The shop had to pay $1,500 for the game, which turned out to be broken. The atmosphere was high as Rick confronted him on TV. Fans argued over who was correct, and as a result, the store had to alter how they inspected equipment. The incident demonstrated how obstinacy can make a straightforward purchase into a noisy issue. By 2015, his physique was beginning to exhibit signs of stress from his blunders and celebrity. After he put on almost 30 pounds once more, fans began making fun of him on the internet. There was an accumulation of jokes, memes, and remarks. The criticism was amplified when Rick even made fun of him on the air. At last, Chum Lee used the money he made from the show to pay for therapy. Stress, self-image, and managing celebrity were the main topics of discussion. Fans who were aware of his suffering felt a new connection to him since he didn't disguise it. In 2010, during a calm afternoon in the pawn shop for gold and silver, the problems began. Leaning a pawned upright base on a shelf, Chumlee left without hesitation. The base required cautious handling because it was antique and expensive, even though it had just been pawned for $700. It slid, hit the floor, and broke apart in front of everyone a few seconds later. The entire store went cold. When they heard the ruckus, employees, patrons, and even passers-by turned their heads. The first estimate for repairs was $20,000. A catastrophe for a single pawn item, but not the outrageous $200,000 hoax that went viral online. When Rick Harrison came and saw the wreck, the room was filled with his rage. Chumlee was sent home immediately after he called him into the office and yelled that he was done for the day. Rick later informed him that he would need to use his own resources to pay for the repairs in full. Chumlee made the payment. The entire incident was never shown on the show, but the rumors circulated among the employees and music made its way onto fan forums, creating one of the most talked about backstage incidents in Pawn Stars history. The consequences were severe. The owner of the base intended to recoup every dollar of its actual worth. He wanted full compensation and threatened to take legal action. The company offered repairs in an attempt to defuse the situation, but the owner insisted on more. Suit rumors began to circulate. Later, when a reporter questioned Chumlee about it, he shrugged in confusion and said, "I don't know what I was thinking." That one statement went viral in tabloids and fan pages. He appeared irresponsible as a result of people repeating it like a meme. In order to avoid a public trial, the store negotiated a settlement behind closed doors with the help of attorneys. It all almost blew up into something far larger. Rick immediately made adjustments. For months, Chumlee was prohibited from playing musical instruments. He was unable to participate in any of the typical shop scenes, thus he missed 2 episodes. He underwent required training from Rick and the senior staff on how to carefully transport and store precious objects. The folks inside the store realized that this was the point at which Chumlee's silly reputation ceased to be humorous, even though admirers laughed about it afterwards. He needed to regain people's trust gradually. Then, in 2016, things became more sinister. Police searched his Las Vegas residence on March 9 in search of evidence related to a claim of sexual assault. They could uncover no evidence to back up the assertion. However, they discovered something else. The house was littered with 12 weapons, methamphetamine, Xanax, and about 5 ounces of marijuana. Some were shotguns and handguns that were registered. A fully automatic MP5 that appeared to be from an action movie was among the unregistered assault firearms. A lockable floor vault beneath his bedroom was also discovered by the officers. The tabloids immediately took notice when they opened it and saw a private area with a dancing pole. Fans witnessed how much Chum Lee's private life had diverged from the charming, innocent persona they had become accustomed to seeing on TV in a single day. The charges quickly dropped. 20 felony offenses, illegal possession, firearms, and drugs. Everything added up to what would have been a prison sentence that lasted for decades. He paid the $62,000 bail amount the next day. He might have spent up to 30 years in prison if all the charges were upheld, and some estimates put that figure as high as 70 years. In a public statement, Rick Harrison stated that the store was supporting him, but he provided no specifics. The reality was straightforward. Fans had no idea how close Chumlee was to losing everything. The raid continued to go viral online even after the bail was granted. The vault, the weapons, the drugs, the dancing pole. The History Channel silently halted multiple Pawn Stars broadcasts as every detail fueled the flames. Fans questioned whether Chumlee would permanently vanish from television. Until Chumlee accepted a plea deal in May 2016, the investigation continued. He entered a guilty plea to 1 misdemeanor drug charge and 1 felony firearms charge. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation, therapy, no jail time, and the surrender of all firearms and evidence discovered during the raid. The offense would be erased if he avoided trouble for 3 years. The agreement drew him back from the brink and rescued his career. The stress subsided gradually. Despite speculations that he had been sacked, Chumlee returned to the show in 2017. On social media, Corey Harrison defended him by discussing loyalty and the untidy reality of celebrity. Chumlee remained a member of the shop and the show, but he maintained a more reserved and cautious presence on camera. His return to regular programs on the History Channel was well received by viewers. He also went on with his life. He established Chumlee's Candy on the BLVD, directly across from the pawn shop, in May 2017. It made about $500,000 in its first year of business by selling vintage candies from the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. Visitors entered his candy business directly from the pawn shop and purchased colorful drinks and autographed chocolates. It turned into a standalone attraction and demonstrated his ability to create something other than television. He resumed traveling with Rick and Corey to film Pawn Stars Do America in the early 2020s. He made news, music, in 2022 for a $1,200 Pokemon card deal, and collectors complimented him on how astute he sounded during the discussion. He became more interested in popular culture relics like magic cards as a result of the program, where he was known to wager heavily and astonish even devoted fans. His wealth increased to $5 million by 2025. He was paid roughly $25,000 every episode. His investments in business continued to increase. Accumulated residuals from over 10 years of television. He had transformed the turmoil into something profitable and rebuilt everything that had once appeared to be broken. Instead of the pawn store itself, the majority of his income now comes from his enterprises and appearances. His personal life found its own equilibrium in the midst of it all. He became engaged to Olivia Caputo in 2018, music. After the raid, he used support groups, continued therapy, and remained sober throughout and after probation. Instead of running away from stress, he learned how to deal with it. These peaceful routines helped him create a life that felt stable once more and prevented him from getting into trouble again.